At first glance, Gtfo's co-op FPS action may seem familiar, but a thoughtful combination of atmospheric stealth exploration and brutal difficulty make it refreshingly unique.
Hit him in the ass.
This enjoyable team-focused formula has provided me with 25 hours of chaotic fun, even if a few of its 6 expeditions were lacking in variety. Its early access launch is uncommonly bug-free, but also missing some obvious features like progression and in-game voice chat that, while keenly missed, didn't stop me from having a good time. Gtfo is off to a strong start, and with so many obvious ways to improve on what's already here, I can't wait to see where it ends up. Each expedition in Gtfo begins with a startling descent into a labyrinth of subterranean rooms called the Complex. Navigating its creepy industrial corridors with a team of 4 total players is thrilling, thanks to the tense atmosphere and puzzling stealth encounters. While I did spot a handful of reused rooms during my frantic crawls through its hour-or-so-long expeditions, I was impressed with the clever use of color, volumetric fog, and lighting, or lack thereof, that not only made the recycled rooms feel like a new area, but also ramped up the intensity and effectively sold the illusion that I was descending further into the complex. Enemy and supply locker spawns are randomized, but the layout of the level itself is not, which is a good thing. The handcrafted nature of the expeditions, especially in the later levels, means that even if you lose, you'll be walking away with lessons you can apply to your next attempt. And lose you will. Gtfo is a hard game, and without a progression system to pick away at, the incentive to retry content at this point is simply for the joy of beating it. Completing the final expedition left me with a prideful sense of accomplishment, even if I didn't have a new gun to show for it. I've never loved the idea of sneaking past enemies that could otherwise make for fun targets in a co-op shooter, but stealth feels right at home in Gtfo for many reasons. First, there are enough supplies scattered around every expedition to allow for at least a few disastrous mistakes.
You touched it.
Bro, what the f***?
Oh my god, brother.
Secondly, you'll still get plenty of use out of your guns from defending alarm-triggering security doors and reactors. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, the monstrous inhabitants of the complex called sleepers seem tailor-made to be crushed in the dark. Every sleeper is effectively its own little game of red light, green light. They glow, pulse, and eventually mob you if you're careless enough to keep moving or forgot to turn off your flashlight. It's a simple enough concept to grasp in seconds, yet remains challenging throughout, thanks to some welcome new variables introduced along the way. Some enemies may be packed tightly together. Giant sleepers up the stakes, and a wandering monster called the Scout will spawn extra waves in addition to raising a panic-inducing alarm if they detect you with their groping tendrils. What I love about the puzzle that each new room presents is that there's always more than one right answer, and there's usually some leeway to bend the rules in your favor. For instance, you can use your flashlight to synchronize the pulsing of a large group in order to sneak by. The only major criticism I have of the sleepers is that the range at which they can detect you killing their allies feels inconsistent. You won't encounter every enemy Gtfo has to offer in the first few hours, which is nice, but its creative reuse of assets is the main thing that keeps Rundown 1, the 6 levels covered in this review that theoretically will be swapped out for new ones in the future, from being straight up repetitive. I have little doubt that this is merely a symptom of early access, but there's no question that Gtfo is still in desperate need of additional enemy variety, unique environments, and mission archetypes. The general rule of Gtfo is that safety costs resources while risk begets reward. As a result, there are meaningful choices for your team to make around every corner, and most are fun, even if not all are fruitful. For instance, it's risky to melee a scout, but if it pays off, it will allow your team to continue undetected. It's safer to snipe the scout, but to do so, you'll have to use scarce ammo to fight the rest of the room. Freeze a giant at the cost of hardening seafoam, and pick it apart like an ice sculpture. Or have your squad wind up and kneecap the bastard, but risk getting pummeled. In fact, whole sections of each expedition are entirely optional, but making a beeline for the objective, assuming you can figure out where it is, usually leaves your team low on supplies, and when the ammo runs out, there's nothing left to do but die. Annoyingly, you can't combine partially used stacks of supplies like healing items or tossable glow sticks, which feels archaic for a 2019 shooter. Similarly, fall damage is brutally punishing but serves no clear purpose because platforming isn't prevalent. Gtfo's current arsenal is a bit messy in its execution as well. The DMR, for instance, has a limited ammo supply and therefore high damage theoretically, but doesn't always kill a small enemy in a single shot to the head. And while I love taking the sniper to cleanly deal with scouts, the fact that its Spartan ammunition doesn't overpenetrate even small sleepers means that its application elsewhere feels wasted. There are some winners here though. The pistol and revolver both feel great and work wonders. Things are much more consistent on the tool front, where the Sentry's Seafoam Launcher, Mine Deployer, and nifty enemy sensing bioscanner all have their uses and synergize well. Gtfo succeeds phenomenally at presenting an enormous amount of reasons to communicate and work together, syncing up hammer hits to dispatch tight packs of enemies, relaying sleeper locations to your squad with the bioscanner, resupplying one another, and yelling at each other to stop moving.
Stop.
Flashlights off!
Are just a few examples that justify the use of voice communications. It's a pity then that Gtfo has none in-game as of yet, but the developers have provided a solution in the form of in-game Discord functionality. You can copy a lobby code, send it to a friend on Discord, and their Gtfo client will automatically detect the code in the clipboard and display a prompt to join in-game. If you're trying to go it alone, you're simply out of luck. While I'm not fool enough to claim that it's totally impossible, you'd have to be some kind of god to complete any of these expeditions alone. While a horde of zombie-like sleepers rushing mindlessly towards four men with guns may look familiar, Gtfo's early access version is anything but more of the same for the co-op shooter genre. Its stealth action is well thought out and presents a lot of excellent opportunities for fun coordination with your squad. Its 6 enjoyably terrifying expeditions are creative and surprising enough to overlook the otherwise plain lack in variety in its environments, enemies, and objectives. And while the symptoms of its early access state may be keenly felt where breadth of content is concerned, there is no shortage of depth in Gtfo. It's clever, creepy, and already surprisingly polished, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here. If you enjoyed the review or have questions, shoot me a follow on Twitter @ThugandDuggan, and for all things Gtfo, keep it right here on IGN.